snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I'm here today to do a book review, and I'm going to be reviewing Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel today. This is one of the award nominees for the Booktube SFF Awards, and I was very excited to get to it because it was the only one of them that I hadn't read that we were planning to read as a read-along this month, and so I was very excited to give it a go and see what it was all about and discover for myself why so many of you nominated it and liked it. Let's talk a little bit about what it was all about. So, going into this, I had no idea. I didn't have a clue what it was about. I thought maybe a station, because it's called Station 11. No, not really about a station at all. Not even any trains from what I remember. This is a really interesting, very, very deep and very thought-provoking book, but it's nothing like what I expected it to be. I was expecting some sort of hard science fiction or fantasy elements, like a lot of computery stuff or a lot of dragons and wizards or something like that, but there wasn't any of that at all. I would call this speculative fiction, and it would kind of link into the sci-fi genre, but I wouldn't say that this was a fantasy book really. I would definitely say it's more speculative than anything else. It's something that I probably wouldn't have picked up myself, but I'm quite glad that I did pick it up because of the awards, because it was something different and it was something fresh, and it was actually really, really easy to get through as well. It's only like 300 and something pages, so it was very, very quick to get through it and sort of read it all in a day, which is what I did. It's set in the modern day world, and we're watching a play of King Lear, which is a Shakespearean play for any of you who didn't know, and we're watching that and we're seeing some of the actors on stage, and then suddenly one of the actors actually falls over and collapses, and we think he's had a heart attack and he dies, which all happens straight away, so it's not a spoiler. And then we, from that point on, sort of see that as an omen for what happens next, because this guy dies on stage in front of all these people and he's a big celebrity, and then after that a massive virus breaks out and many, many, many hundreds of people are killed by this virus, and it becomes a post-apocalyptic type world with all of this very ethereal, sort of creeping around, and no one trusting each other, and no one believing that anyone else is nice, and no one really knowing what to do, and all of the electricity and things are shut off, and nothing is working basically. People have got to go back to sort of caveman times when they have no electricity, no inventions that are working, and they just have to live like that and sort of get through it all because of this virus that has wiped out most of the population. I initially thought, when I got to this point and realised, oh, it's a dystopian, I thought, okay, well, it's going to be a fairly typical dystopian. It's going to be about this tribe of people who are surviving or something like that, and it kind of is. It does have elements of that. We're following a lot of different characters, and we get to see them both before and after this apocalypse has happened, so we get to see their past storylines and what their lives were like before it, and then we get to see how they have fitted themselves into this world after the apocalypse has come. We also get to see them undertake some really big, long, expansive journeys as they sort of traverse by foot around the world, and we get to focus on a symphony orchestra, which is really interesting because one of the elements that Emily St. John Mandel focuses on is the idea that when all of this stuff is scraped away, everything is taken back from humankind, all of the technology and everything is gone and stripped away from us, the arts and music and plays and artwork and paintings and drawings and graphic media, all of these things become very important to people, and people start to really understand and love these things again, and maybe appreciate them a lot more than they did in the time when technology was raiding everything. And I really loved that idea of it, and the sort of poignancy of her thoughts on that, and the way that she showed that to the reader very, very clearly and very well. So we're kind of following this symphony orchestra. We follow a lot of different characters from within that who play different instruments, and they take up different roles in Shakespearean plays. I found it all very interesting. It was very weird to begin with. I wasn't expecting it to be about Shakespeare and music and post-apocalyptic stuff. I wasn't expecting that. But if you go into it knowing that, I think it would be a really thought-provoking read, and it definitely turned into a thought-provoking read for me. By the second half of the book, I was quite captivated by it, even though I wasn't loving it. I wasn't really drawn in completely. I still found it very likeable and very intriguing, and some really interesting points were raised. I did like some funny moments. There were a lot of quirky funny moments, such as when these people are talking and they're like, oh, Why did we used to say I'll shoot off an email when we don't shoot emails? We were just pressing a button, and all of this sort of metaphorical stuff and all of these colloquial phrases that they're questioning. Like, why did we say that? Why did we do that when we had all this technology? Why did we write out THX when we couldn't write thanks? Why did we not have the time to do these things and show people that we cared about them and loved them? And so it's a really interesting and thought-provoking read in terms of that. I did like some of the characters in the book a lot more than others. I found Arthur and Miranda's storylines to be very captivating. I also liked Kristen and Clark later on, but they took a little bit longer for me to warm up to them. But particularly Miranda's storyline did interest me the most, I think, and Arthur's, because Miranda is a comic book artist and she's creating this graphic novel called the Dr. 11 graphic novel, and she has a very sort of troublesome career with that, and she never really takes it anywhere, and she's always talking about these big scapes that she's planning and all of these wonderful ideas that she has for the graphic novel. And Emily St. John Mandel's descriptions of this graphic novel made me want to have this novel. Like, I want it to be a real thing. I want this graphic novel to be real because it sounds so cool, it sounds so interesting, and it sounds as though this character was just devoting so much stuff into it. So maybe one day she'll make this graphic novel, I don't know, but that storyline with her particularly interested me because obviously I love graphic novels, and I just found her as a character quite an interesting one because of the way that her life took her and the direction that she ended up going in. I also really liked Arthur. He's the one who dies at the beginning. We get to see his life before he dies, obviously, not after. And I just found his life really, really weird and really crazy because he's had a whirlwind of a life for sure. Like, he's a celebrity and he's a bit of a crazy one, and he's been through a lot. So I thought his storyline was quite fascinating, and the way that his events of his life sort of tied everyone together a little bit. Many of the different characters were connected in strange and mysterious ways, and I loved seeing all of that unfold. I thought that was all very interesting. On the whole, it was very thought-provoking, it was very mysterious. It did bring up some interesting points that I hadn't considered about what I would do if I was in a post-apocalyptic situation and what things would survive, what sort of things would the race of humans actually value enough to take with them after such a catastrophe. So I really enjoyed that. I did like the museum that we saw in there as well. I thought that was really cool. So there were some very, very interesting and very cool ideas. For me, the things that it lacked was a sort of definitive storyline. I did feel like it was a little bit wishy-washy. It skips forwards and backwards in time, but we never get given a date of like which date we're at. So sometimes it could get a bit confusing about whether you were in the past or whether you were in the present day. I didn't always know exactly which one until later in the chapter when I had figured it out. So that was a little bit annoying, and then some of the characters I didn't really care for, and I didn't really care about their backstory that much because they weren't that interesting to me. So on the whole, I gave this a 3.5 stars. I thought it was very well written. I didn't have a problem with the writing style at all, and it felt very quick to get through. It was really, really fast. But I did feel like there were some areas that suffered from just not being defined well enough and not having enough backstory and depth to them really make me invested in those characters, or all of the characters. Some of them were a lot better developed than others. So yeah, I thought it had some great ideas. I would love to hear your thoughts if you guys have read this. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Especially if you've read it for the Booktube SFF Awards. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Let me know whether you liked it or didn't, and I will see you all very, very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about books.